almost every company nowadays has some sort of single sign-on that Active Directory and Entra is tied to. And so if you can get in and you can impersonate, Thomas Bryant, one, you have access to a whole lot of other applications, but that you now can query Active Directory and see who are the admins. And those are the accounts that you typically are going to want to go and try to compromise if you're a bad actor.
Welcome back. My name is Thomas Maurer, and I'm here with Thomas Bryant from Commvault, who is a regular guest almost on this YouTube channel. And I would almost say it's always super interesting to talk to someone who speaks cybersecurity, cyber recovery, cyber resiliency. And obviously, he always has some great stories as well. So great to have you today.
Thanks, Thomas. It's great to be here. It's always a fun chat with you. I think your wealth of knowledge around all things is always great, just to bounce around our stories and talk about some tech.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking about like some tech, we recently recorded a webinar together for Commvault, speaking about Active Directory and obviously covering like how Commvault can help recovering and protecting your identity environment and how important that is. And like you have some really cool features there. And I think we can talk about that also a little bit later on as well. But I think in general, speaking about Active Directory or identity systems in that regard, I think it's going to be a good topic. And I think we can cover that a little bit more deeply as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Active Directory, it's hard to believe it's been around for over a quarter of a century. But I mean, it's still an integral part of almost every enterprise's identity and access management system. So, I mean, yeah, there's new cloud native and other things out there for identity, but I mean, Active Directory is still the go-to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at like, I don't know, the pure on-prem solution, I don't know how big the market share is, and probably even if I would know, I should probably not say. But as everyone knows in the industry, it's probably a super large number. I think if in any enterprise you find Active Directory at some point for managing the identities, and then you're absolutely right. I mean, with cloud, the whole thing maybe changed a little bit, but then there's also obviously these hybrid identities where you have Entra, for example, Microsoft Entra, formerly known for those still Azure AD, which is obviously important, like when you expand across hybrid and multi-cloud scenarios, or if you're even a startup, you probably just have Entra, right? Like you probably don't have an on-prem environment maybe anymore, but you still need to manage your identities for your SaaS apps or for just like all the things you do in the cloud for your email, whatever. At one point, you will basically have a system like this, and it could be pretty much that it's Entra or something like that. But then again, for most of the traditional companies out there, it's probably going to be some hybrid identity with Active Directory on-prem and then Entra. So yeah, it's a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if you're going to have Active Directory, having Entra ID is great to have there as well, and vice versa. I mean, I mean, you can't say it enough. It is like the linchpin. It is it's the central thing you need, because if you don't have identity, how can you manage your applications and everything else? And so, I mean, that's one thing that I love about Microsoft is you do make things really, really easy.
We try to integrate in a lot of different things. So that's kind of like, I think, where everything comes together at one point. And I think that to me is like, okay, hey, these things integrate. And also, I mean, it makes it easy if you, I think if you have a market share, like with Active Directory on-prem like this, then obviously a lot of, like, even if you have other solutions, they want to integrate into this, right? And so I think that is where we will always touch. And I think, like, I mean, and you can probably say more to that, but like identity in general, I think it's really one of the most important parts when it comes to cybersecurity and cyber resiliency. I think like protecting your identity is probably it is one of the key concepts there as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you always want to make sure that you're protecting your identity systems, but I think it goes even further than that. I mean, as I've seen many, many times, and I've experienced early in my career, even making, there's also just the regular mistake things that happen, right? You go through and you're you're doing something like I'm manipulating a user account, or I'm dealing with something like a group policy object where you can apply large changes to a lot of people very quickly. Sometimes you can make a mistake. We make mistakes. We're fallible, and those can make some pretty damaging things. And so, just being able to have a way to roll back some of those changes and recover from just everyday normal occurrences is kind of critical too.
Yeah. I mean, for those who are dealing with Active Directory out there, I would like to speak about a little bit of the on-prem solutions. You probably have been in that scenario where you did something wrong, you deleted the user, computer objects, or it's also, I mean, one is one thing, but then obviously with Active Directory and the way you can delete a whole OU, an organization unit, and remove a lot of important things, and it becomes very quickly a problem, right? So yeah, I'm not sure. Have you seen any I know you always have these great stories. Do you have seen any of these
I mean, I don't know if I want to admit to any of these stories, because I've certainly, back in, I guess it was 99 when AD first started. We were one of the organizations I was working with back then. I mean, we were very early to jump on the bandwagon, getting away from kind of the NT style of doing things, moving into Active Directory. We're getting rid of some of the old Novell systems back then. And yeah, I mean, I've even made mistakes. I've gone through and early in my days, it was all about, things like, oh, hey, wow, this group policy object thing is fantastic. And there's, that kind of parent-child relationship and which one takes precedence. And yeah, I've made some mistakes on even that of just, like the login scripts where, okay, I'm going to push out this login script and I pushed out the wrong one. And all of a sudden, all my users were experiencing like 10-minute login times. They were less than happy about that sort of a change.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of, okay, now I've got to figure out where did I apply that and how do I roll it back? And so I had to go do it the manual way, which was not fun. It is not exciting to go through and figure out which group policy was affecting all those users. Where did I make that change? Because it was just human error. I mean, there was no malicious intent, but now I've got to go figure out how to fix that.
Yeah, those, again, they can be, I mean, centralized things are good. There's a lot of benefit in having this. But again, if you make changes there and it can have a pretty big impact as well. So yeah. I just remember, I was I did some user stuff as well, not super large environments where I had to actually manage end users and stuff like that. It was smaller, but still important for the companies, obviously. Luckily there, I didn't really make too much mess. There's could be potentially that you remove a computer object or something which you shouldn't have done. But smaller things. Luckily, I was always on the good side on this. But I also had to deal with Active Directory also on the data center side. So your servers are joined to Active Directory. Your hypervisors, when you work with Hyper-V, for example, are joined to Active Directory. So your clusters depend on this and things like that. So once you play there, you can take down a whole virtualization environment by just doing some mistakes, removing some computer objects there, which I shouldn't have done. Those things are there, right? And I think that was very interesting as well. Like what I learned also working with different customers is that usually the people who managed Active Directory, they were more on the user side, right? So they managed the end user laptops, they managed the software deployment part, they managed the users, they're probably also Exchange and things like that. So they were not really focusing so much on the data center side of things. And so you brought up the GPOs, the group policies. So when they assign suddenly these GPOs to data center environments where they suddenly deploy, let's say, a software package or make some setting changes, right, where to disable certain features or enable certain features, that also applies to Windows Server and Hyper-V. And that can cause a lot of up there in these cases as well. We had like things like suddenly they turn on firewalls or specific firewall settings or block certain settings, and you're like, or
Ouch.
you find suddenly Adobe Acrobat Reader on one of the hypervisors, and you're like, what is this?
That shouldn't be there.
So no, that shouldn't be there. But those are like interesting things. I also saw, I not saw, but I was actually involved in one of these. Is like where I was working for a larger service provider, and we had some networking outage, and obviously, like we had an identity system, we used Active Directory for all of this, but then the networking caused everything to go down, like completely everything. Like, so there was no more clusters, no more servers available. We had to go basically to the data center to actually start and boot everything up.
Those are not the days.
Yep, I mean, it happens, right? And it's even worse if you're a service provider, because it's not just your company who's impacted.
Yeah,
it's a lot of others as well. And I remember, I think even the phones, like the way the help desk thing was set up, they couldn't log into the ticketing system anymore.
Oh goodness!
Because that was based on identity. So everything depends and relates on AD. So we needed to figure out a way to actually come back and start up some of the Active Directory servers. So at least we get identity to bring up the clusters, and then from there on go further. And I mean, you could argue that it was a design error. I mean, there's always people who said, I think one thing was always, you have to have one physical Active Directory domain controller in your environment. And of course, in that case, but then Microsoft at one point, it's like, not necessarily. And I mean, no one was thinking, there were multiple of these, right? Usually you have multiples of these Active Directory domain controllers. And then you have them across different data centers and locations and everything, so that if one side goes down, the other one lives, and so on. But no one was expecting the whole network in general, like across all the different locations, to be down. So everything was down. And that was kind of like, there was no like, no one expected this to happen like that, right? This was really something we found out later, obviously, that this is probably not a good thing. I will not tell you what caused this, by the way. This is not something should have ever happened. But actually, it happens. That's the
thing, right? You've got to plan for the unexpected, and you do the best you can. But there's still things that are going to happen. Another kind of funny, I don't know if it's a funny story, but this is a friend of mine who's telling me about a story about they accidentally somehow deleted the CFO's account.
Ow.
And this was like right before like they had to do all their 10Ks and sign off on stuff. So the one person who has to sign off on all the financial statements and all the things that they do is the CFO, and he no longer existed in the company. And they had no way to they didn't have a way to recover it easily. And so they basically just had to rebuild his account and then go through and reassign that account, all the permissions and all the things. But I mean, it took them a while to try to recover it manually, which is not necessarily the easiest thing for the way that they had deleted him. And it's just, and then there's, Dan mentioned that other story too, of just like, even when you're talking about design and architecture, some people, they take it a step even farther of like, well, we're going to leave an Active Directory server offline. It's like, well, Active Directory doesn't really like that. It expects things to actually be online. And so that was like their fallback plan was, hey, we'll just have one that has the mostly recent copy and we can always push it back. It's like, well, that doesn't work so well. But I guess that if that's your design, good luck.
I like the kind of mostly recent version of Active Directory, of your Active Directory. Active Directory, like this is also something, if people who are dealing with Active Directory, they know like replication is one of the key things, right? And you can have some big problems if you don't know what you're doing. And especially when virtualization came around, things like it's super easy to quickly stop a VM. It doesn't matter if it's a domain controller or whatnot. And then, like 3 weeks later, we decide to turn it on again. And I mean, in many cases, to be fair, it actually the way Active Directory is built, it can fix itself, and it's like smart enough. But you can create trouble. You can create trouble if you want to. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, there aren't many people that have on their CV, AD architect anymore. Or it's there. I think we're a dying breed in some ways. I mean, in many ways, things like Entra ID has solved a lot of the architectural challenges or complexities, I should say. Not really challenges, but just like it makes it so much easier. But yeah, it's still a challenge that a lot of organizations face, and even now with just forgetting the one side of things of being the accidental things or every day, but with ransomware attacks and cyber attacks in general coming, creates even more challenges for how do I recover from an attack where instead of just a normal everyday thing, it's actually has malicious intent, and that's a lot more challenging.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, just by the way, it just came up in my mind. I didn't think for this for a while, but when you said about like people who really know Active Directory, I remember Microsoft stopped that like years ago already, but there was this kind of like, I don't know what it was called, Microsoft Certified Master or something like really big, like the highest kind of like certification you could get. You had to go actually, I think, to a training week to Redmond. And one of the products you could do that was for Active Directory. So I don't know if it was sort of an architect or something like that. It was like, hey, you need to go through this. And I don't recall the name fully, but I was like, when I was younger, I was always like, oh, this is actually awesome. I want to do this. But not in Active Directory, because I knew there's like so many Active Directory experts back then. I was like, well, they should create one for virtualization back then. I was like, yeah, I want to do that. But yeah, before we go into and talk a little bit about the Entra thing, which you just brought up, and the attack thing as well, I also want to quickly check. I mean, again, we always talk about this, Active Directory, this thing from the past, right? But it's actually still very, very widely used. And I think a lot of people, if you look at the latest release of Windows Server, they're going to be very, very happy with a lot of like the things which going on. If you look at like, I mean, there's some great changes here on a lot of the things which I liked very much, like bringing terminal, winget, and all the hot patching stuff. But then you have this massive section on changes for Active Directory, right? A lot of like fixes, new stuff, new security improvements, all that stuff. I mean, you can see just like I'm just scrolling through. This is the official documentation for everything new, and you can see here goes all the way down. Yeah, just a few things, right? But it's actually interesting. Also, if we go back, right, we had to like I remember we had this like little bit of like questions around this about Active Directory when we did release Windows Server 2022. When you look at this here, you can see there is not, I don't think there is much like on Active Directory, if there is any. Like there's maybe some small changes where Active Directory is involved, but you can see here, let's let me scroll down all the way just to be sure that everyone believes me. But here we did not have that much going on. And compare, I mean, group managed service account, okay, we can think about that as one of the Active Directory things, but that was mostly it. And I don't think there was not even a schema change or something, I think, in 2022. I'm not 100% sure anymore. But I'm happy that now people can see actually what happened in 2025 here. I think that there's some, and again, as you said, it's also important, right? We don't do this out of fun, or Microsoft doesn't do this out of fun. It's actually needed, especially like you mentioned, attacking scenarios. I'm sure you have seen some interesting things there as well when it comes to attacks. I mean, identity is one of the first things probably an attacker, also in a ransomware situation, would want to do and take control of.
Absolutely. I mean, whether it's trying to get a golden ticket, so to speak, in Active Directory, or just gaining access. I mean, almost every company nowadays has some sort of single sign-on that Active Directory and Entra is tied to. And so if you can get in and you can impersonate, Thomas Bryant, one, you have access to a whole lot of other applications, but that you now can query Active Directory and see who are the admins, and those are the accounts that you typically are going to want to go and try to compromise if you're a bad actor. And if you can do that, you now have the ability to impersonate, someone who has the ability to delete all of the users or put in malicious GPOs or any number of other things. I mean, you see it time and time again that I think the stat is somewhere around 90% of all cyber attacks go after the identity and access management systems, whether that's Active Directory or an Okta or whatever it may be. It doesn't matter, because they know that once they have those keys, they can go wherever they want and do whatever they want to do.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it just makes things even more difficult when you try to think about how to recover, because not only do you have to worry about that account, but if you're a bad actor, what else are you going to do? You want to be persistent. You want to make sure that you have other accounts. So maybe you go and change other accounts to have elevated permissions. You create accounts, delete other accounts, create new ones, and try to delete logs. Try to make it really difficult to find who did what. So even just being able to audit what you do have after an attack can be difficult. And I've seen a lot of organizations, unfortunately, they make the choice of, well, they don't realize how important it is and have good backups of Active Directory, but then they don't know what they can trust. And so they just start over, which again, simple things like joining machines to a domain. Wow, what a nightmare that is when you have to go, change the domain for hundreds of thousands of machines.
Like, you need
everything.
to go physically to everything. And that's not, I think I did this one, but it was not because of an attack. It was like a smaller company with only 50 employees or something. And we said for the migration, it would have been we switched completely to a new domain and everything. And so at one point, someone decided, hey, it's probably the easiest way if we just do this all manually. And okay, well, let's do this. And for 50, I mean, you can do things like that. But if you have hundreds, thousands of employees, it's not a situation you want to be in. And these attack things, when people usually, when I was a consultant, usually people were you get an account sometimes in their environments to do things, right? I mean, sometimes you need. And then they ask me, what permissions do you need? And I try to say, well, I don't want any. If I can, because I don't want to have anything on my account. Because every time, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, probably familiar with this, but then if you log into a system, your account is on that system, right? And if someone has admin rights on that system, they can take over your ticket, your hash, and then go from there again. And so I don't want to have anything on these on my account, because the less I have, the better. And I remember actually working at the customer, and I said hey, I need to what was it? Something where I needed domain admin too. And I was asking, hey, can you do you have an account so I can do this task, whatever it was? And he was like, yeah, I can do that with my personal, not personal, but my company account. My named user is actually domain admin. And I'm like, so every time you log into any system, you're and then I was like, okay, well, and then you have to because I was not there as a security consultant, right? But I was like, well, maybe you should not have that. It's just something, and the reason for it was just because it was just easier for them to do, right? But no, these are some fun things. And I think also with now Entra and all these cloud systems, I think things get way better, to be honest. Once it's a little bit hybrid. It also adds some security features and some intelligence to it, to actually find attacking scenarios. I mean, simple things like figuring out that your user account is now used somewhere in a region where you shouldn't be. Small things like this. I mean, this is not something we are talking now. This exists, I mean, for years, right? Where we can detect geolocation stuff. But this is really enabled, I think, through not just, but also through cloud identity and things like that. And there's also the stat, by the way. I'm sure you're aware of this. I think a Microsoft stat is I think over 99.999. I don't know how many nines after the dot of accounts which are hacked are basically accounts with no multi-factor authentication, right? Like that's like so there's like it's a very simple thing, and I'm not really sure anymore, but I think we just announced that like Azure accounts now need to have MFA enabled. And I think that's going to help already a lot, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's the simple things, and even just going back and taking some time to do a little housekeeping. But you know, it's also hard. I mean, being in the data center business for a long time, you know, you're half the time you're fighting fires instead of building things, or maybe more, and you don't get that opportunity to go back. But yeah, I mean, with the cloud identity and Entra ID, and even with like, you know, forest level, right? Well, we've talked a lot about like individual domains, but like forest level capabilities and whatnot. I mean, it becomes better in many ways. Like you can do things at a higher level and tie things together. But yeah, it's a fun time. It definitely is challenging for a lot of folks, and you know, it's something that we, you know, you're getting it to your point. You know, if you don't read the release notes, sometimes you miss some of these great new capabilities that come out, and something that again people are taking for granted, and they need to go back and kind of revisit some of these things that are critical to your infrastructure.
Yeah. So in the webinar, which we had before, we were also like had a chance to look at the demo, basically how Commvault can help with a lot of these different scenarios. And by the way, I will put the link to the webinar in the description of this video. So for everyone who wants to watch the demo, they can do that, obviously. But can you describe a little bit? Okay, so from, let's say, obviously we have all these different things where identity systems get either maliciously attacked or they just have issues. What can we do actually to get into a good state without, as we talked before, like doing it all manually or something like that? What is like the thing where, okay, this is what I would do? I mean, there's, as we said, things can happen, right? But what is my safety net basically when it comes to this?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like, look, let's call it out. Just there is a manual way to do things. I think that's important. You know, Microsoft puts out a great guide. It's a long guide of how you can recover, you know, Active Directory and recover a full forest. And so that is always there for folks to take advantage of. But you know, what we've seen is organizations want that safety net, as you said, and they want to be able to recover quickly. They want to be able to do comparison changes and things like that. And so that's exactly what we're trying to do, is make it very easy, very prescriptive, and automate things ruthlessly. And so really what our capabilities for protecting and recovering Active Directory, they start off with the foundational pieces of, you know, recovering users and groups and things and whatnot, all the way up to recovering a full forest. But again, that's not easy. And so being able to essentially give them a run book. So what we've done is we've taken that guide that Microsoft provides and we've turned it into a run book to make it easy. So you can do it lights out if you want to and say, hey, you know, I want you to recover my entire forest and all my domains, and you can see exactly what it looks like. Or you can select different pieces where you want more kind of warm and fuzzy, if you will, where, hey, I want to go through this process, but I want to put in a break. I want it to pause and I want to go verify things. And then I'll come back and I'll tell it to continue on. It would be really easy just to make it a black box, but one thing about identity is when it's down, you're down. And so you want to make sure that you make it as easy as possible. And so you can interrupt that process to verify, right? I don't want to go push one button, have it recover my entire forest, and then find out it fails on step 77 and I have to start the whole thing over again, right? I would rather it kind of tell me, hey, I'm going to put a pause here. You should go verify that these things work. You know, all your time settings are right. Your DNS is working. I mean, it's even things that are even more fundamental than Active Directory. Is just, is your network working, and do you have time syncing working properly in your organization, right? If that's not working and you don't have DNS working, nothing's going to work. Doesn't
Yep.
matter if Active Directory is up or not. So, it's all about those little things too that people don't think about when recovering Active Directory that we put in there in that run book to make it as simple and, foolproof, if you will, because you don't want to have to think about it. I mean, if there's one thing that I've seen from when people get hit by cyber attacks is time is of the essence. The average recovery time is 24 days.
Okay.
That's a long time. And that's just for the minimum viable set of applications that an organization has. And if you can shrink down that Active Directory piece from what may be a couple of days of manual rebuild or, hey, I'm going to start over to just a few hours, that makes a huge difference. I mean, it puts a dent in that 24 days.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And I mean, especially if you need to do like full recovery scenarios. I think we talked in the webinar. I'm not sure about the number anymore, but someone went through that guide and did a test recovery of their environment. I don't know what the number was, like 36 hours, 48 hours, something like that. And that's just like when you practice it, right? Like this is like a practice. There's no pressure. You don't need to like be super on alert and everything. You're just like doing this as a practice. But if that's real, like you want to double check many things multiple times, and maybe you are impacted. But as you said, like other things too, right? As you said, like time, for example, like that's not like what if that is not there? What if like DNS is not there, as you said, like things like that? Then how do you go deal with all this? So if you need to go from this, you want to have a solution which takes like as much as possible off your shoulder, right? Like and also double checking things. I mean, you want to do these things and then not necessarily actually go through and type something manually if you really don't need to. So yeah, I like that part as well. And I liked how like it was like I remember it was like a super organized list. You could actually go through the different points and enable and disable them. Depending on if you don't need that, you need that, whatever, you can do this and be even faster. I think that one was really good to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like I equate a lot of things to like sports and whatnot, and our CMO does as well. But like the first time if you're a boxer, the first time you get hit, you don't want it to be like when you're in the ring with like in a real fight. Same thing goes for ransomware or cyber attacks. You don't want to have to recover Active Directory for the first time during an attack. So you should be practicing these things. You should be going through and, build one in Azure, right? Take your Active Directory environment, recover it into an Azure VM, go through that process, get comfortable with it, get comfortable with, Commvault. And that way, when the real thing does happen, you have confidence that the platform can actually recover, but two, you have confidence in yourself because people, it's not just technology, right? It's people, process, and technology. And so everybody has to be comfortable with what is going to happen, how it's going to happen. And so things like the run book can remove a lot of the human error, but you still want to be practicing these sorts of activities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another part which, by the way, I really liked. I mean, we haven't really like shown that in the webinar, I think, but we quickly point out that it also supports Entra, right? And I think that is like this is just like super important as well. I mean, again, like companies who are just having Active Directory today, I mean, I'm sure there are some, but then you also, I mean, you're probably going to very quickly have this hybrid identity because you're probably going to use some SaaS applications or whatnot. Even if you're just using a couple of SaaS applications, you end up in having an identity provider, hopefully, which can also be leveraged for this. And so I think the solution also supports Entra and maybe some others as well, but like I was happy about the Entra piece there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're gonna have Active Directory, if you don't have Entra ID, you probably should. You should be leveraging that. And so yes, the platform for Commvault Cloud supports both Entra ID and Active Directory. So we want to make sure that no matter where their identity provider is within the Microsoft world, that we're making sure that we protect all of it. Because equally, if Active Directory gets hit and you are an Entra ID user, again, replication can happen and go up. So you've got to make sure that you can recover in Entra ID as well, and vice versa.
And there's also, I mean, also if you have these born in the cloud companies, right, where they
Yeah.
don't have any on-prem infrastructure anymore, I mean,
Yeah.
you still need to have a solution and for your Entra or whatever you're going to use as
Yeah.
an identity provider, even if it's cloud related, right? The cloud, I mean, there are some
Yeah.
capabilities there, but you want to make sure that you can do
Yeah.
these stores.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a shared responsibility model. I mean, a lot of people, some of us, we take it for granted, but I mean, a lot of people just still think that, hey, I'm in the cloud and you'll take care of everything for me, and that's not necessarily true. A lot of it is taken care of for folks, but that shared responsibility model, and again, there's lots of great tools from Microsoft that can help with some of the basic stuff, but some of the human error things or some of the changes that you can make, you want even just the ability to roll that back simply and easily. Not all of that is going to be provided by, in this case, Microsoft, but any cloud provider, right? They don't do everything. It's a shared responsibility, and so that's where we see that as a value add. Is where can we help, with those sorts of other, whether it's a normal daily task kind of thing of like, hey, I deleted a user, made a change, whatever. I made a bad change to attributes across 1,000 users. Oh boy, that can be fun. Or recovering from a cyber attack. So we want to make sure that we've got it all covered, no matter where your identity provider is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's some key stuff there. So I think it was great today talking to you. If people want to learn more about these capabilities we just talked about, do you have like any place where they should go or what they should look out for to really see, hey, this could help me and I can learn more?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you can always go to commvault.com. If you go there, we have a page for Active Directory and Entra ID with some demo links and things like that. We've got some videos up, of course, on YouTube and things like that. And folks can always reach out to me if they want to directly as well. I'm on LinkedIn, so they can always find me there. But yeah, I mean, I would say just start at commvault.com, learn a little bit more about what we're doing, watch some of the overview videos. Would be my suggestion.
Awesome. So thank you very much. I obviously will put all the links we just talked about and also the link to the webinar into the description below so people can learn more about what Commvault can do in case of Active Directory and Entra ID. Thank you very much, Thomas. It was a pleasure to have you again.
Thanks, Thomas. It was great to be here.
And thank you for everyone watching, and I hope you subscribe to the channel and see you in the next one.